All right. Well, greetings, folks. Welcome to the day two of this workshop and to this session. Uh, my screen looks okay.
You're all good, Amit.
All right, great. Well, I'm actually pretty excited to present for this particular topic because this is kind of something very near and dear and familiar to the Hubzero team here, the diversity and the sustainability aspect. So this is a very apt kind of topic. And I'd like to share some information around the Hubzero platform and how we go about supporting different communities. All right, so here is a quick outline for this talk. I need to turn off my video for a moment. Okay, so just a little bit of background. The Hubzero project actually initiated as a follow-on to NanoHub at Purdue University, and over the years it has transformed. But in particular, NSF funded the cyber infrastructure in 2002 to serve the nano tech community, and then when that went underway and it was quite successful, one of the NSF or the advisory board members suggested that it would be great if this platform can be make domain agnostic and serve other communities. And so that's where the Hubzero name was born. And then in 2019, the Hubzero project and the team moved to UCSD. And so this year we are celebrating actually the 20th year for the platform. So this is how the organization sort of looks. Hubzero is a part of the Sustainable Scientific Software Division at the San Diego Supercomputer Center, and we are a part of UC San Diego. Sometimes that's confusing to people because SDSC happens to have a .edu domain name. So we all kind of have seen that we have pretty exclusive resources in the research community all around the world, and these can be very expensive sometimes. These could be colliders or supercomputers and many other things, telescopes and things like that. Then we have a lot of content that is produced by researchers and students. We also have a lot of data, software, and a lot of people create them. And we also have an audience for these things. And these could be scientists, these could be students, and they could be in broad the world citizens, if you will. And the idea is that how can these things commingle? In some way, this is the pain point on how to connect the resources and the software and the data and content with people, right? And so this is kind of a challenging theme which we see occur again and again. And in fact, this is one of the problems which Hubzero tries to solve in its own way. And it's an open source platform which allows research communities to build science gateways or science portals, if you will, where the community can host software applications, data, or other resources and share them with their communities or groups as they see fit on the same web platform. And while doing so, you make all these connections happening between the resources, people, and the software and data, but also you kind of find a way to measure the impact which is being enabled through the gateway itself, and then also help other researchers to sustain their project and their research. So if we kind of think about Hubzero in kind of broad categories, we can think of it that there is a website component where you can brand things and have kind of a layout and look and feel and all that kind of stuff. And then more important stuff for the research community is sort of what we can call a knowledge center, where you can share publication and other resources. And then how does the community interact and collaborate with each other? That's enabled through forums and things like that. And then, of course, you have the software component and the data component and the resource component, which is all commingled so that people can submit software, others can run that software, access the data, whether that software runs on a local resource, local node or a HPC cluster, that's all wiring is available. And then more often than not, we see that most research communities always have a custom component. They have very specific needs beyond all these other things that they want to be available to their platform. This could be dashboards, it could be some kind of ingestion scheme or some other automation which the communities are looking for. And so in some ways, these are kind of the broad categories and the ingredients of Hubzero. However, when the hub is set up for a research community, every hub is unique. They can change the proportion of what these components mean for them and customize them and make it available to their community. And so this mix varies from hub to hub. It's never an even mix, it's always custom. So let's briefly talk about some features of Hubzero. One of the things which research communities is interested in doing is, sometimes sharing the publications which already exist somewhere with their community. Other times they are also interested in publishing something on the hub itself. And so publications are a part of the Hubzero platform. Then the community aspect is obviously important, and the application aspect is also important. So let's talk about this in a little bit more detail. So publishing on the hub essentially means that you have a guided way of kind of entering the metadata about the publication, uploading the data or the artifact which is associated with the publication. You can mint a DOI, and then you can assign a license field. There is also kind of a curation system on the hub which can be enabled, which means anytime something is submitted as a publication, it goes to the editor or the moderator who would review that publication and then go back and forth before it gets published. Now, what shape and form this takes varies from hub to hub. Some hub have a very light touch. They just want to make sure that the metadata and the other information is just about right. So, and the publication is good enough to be published. Others can take a little bit more formal view of this peer review process. So again, the capability is there. It's up to the community to decide, or the gateway PIs to decide what makes sense for their hub. And so publications on the hub basically are, in some ways, they are first-class publications. They have a unique identifier and a license and all that kind of stuff. Collaboration is obviously an important component that you want the community to gather around this cyber infrastructure and be able to interact with each other. To enable that sort of interactivity, Hub supports the notion of groups where you can create a group and invite people and work on projects together. There is also forums that can be enabled in each group, and then there is also a wiki that can be enabled in each group. So it's up to the users and to the community to either create these groups ahead of time or let their members create these groups. And these can have lots of other things embedded in them. And then people can work with each other using these tools. Applications is something which is why actually Hubzero was originally created. One of the things which driver was that the professors wanted to teach some simulation software and use the simulation software in classroom setting. However, creating these softwares and making them run on each and every student in '96 was a big hurdle. And so that's how the genesis of Hubzero or NanoHub was. And then the idea has kind of broadened up, and the idea is that you can bring your tool, it gets kind of installed in the hub, and then it's available to any user or any group on whatever access level setting that the tool developer that may choose to kind of provide for their tools to be available. So, you can install a variety of tools. You can have, a simple Linux desktop, or you can have a very custom application. It could be compiled application, it could be proprietary application. How it runs is a matter of what the resources needs may be. So if your resource needs are pretty light, they run on a local VM next to the hub, and they can service all these requests very quickly. But if there is a need for doing, heavy lifting, there is a way to connect the HPC resources, and then the user basically doesn't have to worry about launching the job. The hub takes care of launching the job, taking the data there and bringing the data back and making it available. And we also have some integration which we have tested on AWS as well. So now let's talk about diverse research communities. And so many hubs are online, and they are available for a variety of disciplines at different institutions in US and beyond. And so here is kind of a list, and if you don't have to scan through this, but if you kind of look at some of these things, you would see there are different disciplines there just by the name of their hubs. And if you kind of look at, what kind of characteristics these each may have, and we are looking at some of them are modest, others are pretty big. They have few hundreds to few million users every year, all of them unique. They have some modest storage requirements to moderate storage requirements, and the hubs have been around for a very long time. And so that is an important piece, that it's not just enough to put together these services and software. It's very important to sustain them over long periods of time. And that is something which Hubzero project has, done quite well in that regard. So we don't have time for a demo, but there are a couple of links which I can share with you. You folks are welcome to kind of click around these now or at a later time to launch an application, look at what the hub looks like. NanoHub is one of the good ones to explore. There is also a hub which we operate for National Cancer Institute. You're welcome to look at that as well. And so let's talk a little bit about how do we work. And so one of the ways where our team works is through, sponsor research projects. Grants are part of the research life cycle. We partner with different communities. We are part of their grant, help them with broader impact, or help them develop new capabilities. Now, grant is not the only mechanism with which people work with us. People sometimes have other avenues of funding, and they come to us for custom application development. And that is also another venue which people have come to us to work with us. The other important component is, again, software development is only one piece of the puzzle. Operations and support is another. And so one of the things which Hubzero has kind of refined over the years is the operation model of taking the infrastructure and running it for a community as long as they desire. Now, that's not to say that somebody cannot run a hub by themselves. They can, but there is kind of a scaling issue and some efficiency which we gain because we run so many of these. And I think another thing which is coming up is regulated data. This can be a little bit hard for people to set up, and we do service communities with regulatory requirements such as HIPAA. And we have a way to kind of set up an infrastructure to meet those requirements. Now, most of us come from the software background, and we know a lot of things about hardware, databases, programming, and security, HPC, and so forth. However, all these things are obviously required, but there is more to it. We need more things to kind of go on to sustain these things. And so we need, support from our financial management or project management. We need communications going on through outreach. We need administrative support. We need instructional specialists. And we also need, a way to sustain the business in some way so that we can serve the community over a long period of time. And so the Hubzero team has, a small group, I would say, or medium-sized group. We have, about 20 people. And the way we work is, we make their time, the people's time available in slices for other projects if there is a need. And so that way the projects don't really have to find talent for their project and keep them, kind of make sure that we keep them. This is the hardest part in this research infrastructure, to kind of staff a project when you have a grant coming, and how do you continue doing that after the grant is kind of, the grant period is over. So there are a couple of things I would like to request. We will be there at the Gateways Conference in San Diego. We welcome you on if you can make it. Come meet us there. We can talk about Hubzero or any other technology thing you are interested in. We are also interested in seeing if there are some unmet needs in your communities or the projects you are working on. Come talk to us. We'd be happy to kind of have a discussion and see if Hubzero may be a fit for that sort of thing. And there are a couple other items which we are looking for from the community. We are actually collecting emerging and existing CI requirements from the research community through our interview process, through the SGCI program. So if you're willing to participate on that, please, do let me know. I would love to connect you with the right people to kind of get their input. It's especially important that we are kind of creating a new set of software and things like that. All that feedback is going to be very applicable for us. And then we are also recruiting. If you or others are looking for opportunities to work on software development or DevOps, we are recruiting. So with that, there's my contact information. Feel free to get in touch with me, and feel free to explore our website. And happy to field any questions. Not sure how we are doing on time, or dig into more detail. Actually, just about right.
We started a bit late, so we have a couple of minutes still for questions. Feel free to enter in the chat or unmute if you'd like to ask Amit some questions.
All right, looks like the presentation covered quite a bit of it. Or hopefully it did. And see a few messages in the chat. Well, thank you for attending. I don't want to hold the stage here any longer. Okay, Sandra has a question.
Yeah, I have a question. Sorry. I needed a little bit longer to unmute myself. So what is your experience, with the, of course, diversity of fields? How often are there very different aspects in creating, the science gateways for them in that regard with, their data, Hubzero instances, there more simulation instances, with the diversity of the different domains? Do you have something like where you say, oh, physics is often in that regard, nano is in that,
Yeah.
Are there typical things? Is the diversity very recognizable between the domains? What is your experience?
I think that's a great question. So I was mentioning that we can think of Hubzero in 5 different boxes: the website, the publication, the knowledge center, the applications, and then so forth. And each hub's requirements is actually very, very unique. So some examples like NanoHub, their focus started in education, and they wanted to create these tools that they can have a class come in and just go through the exercises of kind of doing all these things on the web. In fact, NanoHub also has something called courses, where the professors can actually create a courses which includes running a simulation. Now, this is very unique, and this has been happening for the last 20+ years. So that's a very powerful way to kind of get your students to kind of simulate something which doesn't require any software setup. So they are focusing on actually using the software rather than kind of doing the infrastructure part of it. So that's one side of things. On the other side of things, some communities like NCI Hub, they are curating a lot of information. They are not right now running any applications. And so they want to make the community submit all these publications and data. So it's kind of a repository-esque angle. So that angle we see quite a bit. But of course, it varies from community to community. Applications, some hubs only are interested in running applications. Like there is a hub called Social Media Macroscope, which basically does analysis of Facebook feeds, and that is fully focused on running applications in a specific kind of discipline or social science domain. So yeah, every hub is very unique, and I think while the infrastructure tends to support many of these things in different forms and fashion, and but there is a very distinct way the people actually use the underlying technology, and we keep extending it. And then whenever we find generality, everything becomes a part of, is a part of the software toolkit, and we can just configure and make it available to others as well.